Welcome back to the Seventh Rule. This is the Deep Space Nine deep dive with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello.
This is Q-less. Some say it's episode 6. Others say it's episode 7. Eve England says, doesn't matter. It's better than Next Generation. Whatever episode it is. But anyway, let's talk about this episode a little bit more and what we've noticed this time watching it that we hadn't noticed previously. What do you think, Melissa?
Yeah, I was going into this episode wondering what I noticed this time. I noticed Quark more this time than I did before. From the time he entered Vasha's quarters and then he gets disappeared by Q and then reappeared by Q. His reaction to that was priceless. And then when he's getting umoxed by her, it was great. He's just, yeah. Quark was a rock star in this episode. I really noticed Bashir's skeeviness in this episode. He's a bit of a perv. And I don't know that he's aware of it. I don't know if it's a conscious thing. And he's just, swinging away, see where he lands, And then O'Brien, I chose this background because O'Brien's expressions and reactions in this
side eye
were great. I think Colomini is awesome, and I think he does a wonderful job, and I am noticing him more and more on these rewatches. So, yeah.
What about you, Allison Leech Hyde, wearing her Radical Garrick's Clothier's shirt? Did you notice anything this time around that you hadn't really noticed before?
Well, I agree that it feels like a Next Gen episode set on Deep Space Nine. It would have been nice to get more character development from our new cast. My main questions were on the smaller side. Who went through and decorated all of the rooms with all the knickknacks between the Cardassians leaving and the Bajorans taking over? There's a lot of artwork.
Probably
in
Carrie.
Vasha's, quarters. I'm
Carrie.
like, well, why? But okay. I mean, it makes it pretty and nicer to look at on screen, of course. And the one that made me laugh the hardest was during the auction when he says 500 or 600 bars of gold pressed latinum and holds up his hand and he has 6 fingers. I didn't notice that one the first time.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't even notice it this time.
Yeah.
He's got 6 fingers. I'm like, so
Yeah.
I thought that was funny. And Bashir is very self-involved. And I love the scene with him and Q when he says, "My God, you're an impertinent waiter."
Yeah.
Love that delivery. So those were my favorite parts.
Did anybody else yawn during that scene?
When he was yawning?
Oh, wow.
I yawned.
It's because it shows empathy.
Q is very powerful.
He is very powerful.
Oh, good stuff. What about you, Carrie Schwent, aka Crafty Bear? Your thoughts? Did you notice anything this time you hadn't noticed before?
Oh yeah, a couple things I noticed, and one thing the hubby noticed that I'll sneak in. But the first thing was that crystal that is glowy. I'm looking at that and I'm thinking that looks just like the one Riker gave what's her name in the Angel 1 episode. And looking up stuff afterwards, as I do, it was confirmed. I'm like, I was right. It's the same one. And Eric's yelling from the other room. Okay, you scare me. The way you make notice stuff from other things. It's my superpower. What can I say? And the thing he noticed is during the auction, the Rule the Obscure. Just that name is so cool. The wardrobe. I want to know more about this person because that wardrobe was very, very cool. And the last thing is when Q at the end is talking about 1,000 years ago, Earth was so much more fun. The Crusades, the Spanish Inquisition, Watergate.
Yeah.
Watergate?
Which the math doesn't really add up there, but
No, it
the
doesn't.
joke worked.
Not for the other two either. It was the whole thing was wrong. Yeah.
It's a different Watergate.
I have way too many. Like, yeah, did the rewound? Make sure I heard it right, and then pause. I went, Watergate? Why Watergate? So many other things you could have picked as like the third. One of these things is not like the others. And I definitely would have liked to see Q face off with Kira. Just that one tiny little exchange they had in Ops. There was a little bit of a spark there. The two of them having a longer scene together would have been interesting.
Mm.
If
Those
you
of
don't
you,
remove your hand off of my thigh,
Yeah,
she would probably say something like that to Q.
remember that line.
Mhm.
Oh,
Yeah,
how'd that get there? So everybody at home that's typing away feverishly, the Spanish Inquisition was between 1478 and 1834. 1478 side's pretty close to 1,000 years. The Crusades, it said, began sometime around 1,000 something and ended 1,200 something. Like, that's a Watergate. Yeah, that's a little.
It's just fun.
Yeah, that's just for us to enjoy.
Yeah.
So Eve England is out in Wales. Did you notice anything this particular time that you hadn't noticed before?
I think what I've noticed more was, as Melissa said, O'Brien was particularly funny in this episode. I just loved how when he sees Q, it's, oh, bloody hell. It's like classic O'Brien. And then he proceeds to say bloody at least one more time throughout the episode, which I thought was, you don't often see that on Star Trek. And I know it's not a proper swear word, but it kind of is to some people. So I thought that was really funny. And it's just his expressions, because he just knew what sort of trouble this was going to be for him and the rest of the station. Although it didn't end up being any trouble at all, as we've said. But I thought that sort of initial observation just really set the scene for the episode. I thought that was funny.
We're going to have to ask
Bloody
this when we're
hell.
not recording, but speaking of swear words between the UK and America, you guys have a swear word, or that we think is a very bad word, but to you guys, you're like, it's not that big of a deal. I call my mates that all the time, but we'll, I think that's for when we're not recording.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, you see what I'm saying. All right, Mai is live in Tokyo. What is up, Mai? What'd you notice this time?
The relationship between Vosh and Quark, I think, was, to me, it jumped out. But with Q really just sort of staying with Vosh right by her side. Could we call him a Klingon? I mean, he was clinging on to her quite a lot, actually. His crush on Vosh was almost sweet at the end, but as everybody said, I don't think that he establishes a relationship with anybody else. He didn't need to be there, but it just didn't fit on DS9, not even a little bit, except for that classic scene where Sisko tags him. I thought that was all right. The Vosh and Quark dynamic, though, it was a storyline by itself. It reminded me of the Tosk and O'Brien, where this whole story relied on this relationship between two people, and I thought I got much more out of that than the Q effects. One thing with Quark, though, he was really enjoying that Umux, as Melissa said. But then at one point, he grabs his own ear. I'm thinking, what is he missing, Vosh, or something? What's up with that?
So to finish.
So for Q, exactly. For Q less, I gotta say less Q. That's all.
Oh, mic drop.
Boom, boom. Sorry about that.
So rather than miss Q, you thought this was a miscue.
Well, exactly. Thank you.
So thank you. Goldu Scott Jensen, what did you notice this time around that you hadn't noticed before?
I noticed how I was a little bit less entertained with this than with other viewings, unfortunately. We watched this one waiting to see Sisko just clock Q in the jaw. I did love that scene, though. I think I heard Mr. Brooks hit an octave that he didn't hit until then or afterwards at all when he goes, "What?" as soon as everything flips over to the pugilist arena. And I love how Quark was immediately just putting bets down. Reality just shifted around him, and he doesn't waste a second to put down bets, and it's that quickly. I noticed more how it's just pretty much like everybody was saying, it feels like it is a next gen episode, and I don't know if maybe that was something that the network said that they needed to have some kind of crossover somewhere at some point, because it did feel really shoehorned. It was like a jealous ex-boyfriend come to town to stalk somebody who we're not even emotionally connected with, even though it did end in John DeLance is amazing with his delivery on so many things he says at all times. So that was it was entertaining in that respect. But then I was absolutely floored by how awesome this electric space stingray flying into the wormhole at the end was. I don't know how I didn't remember that very much, but yeah, for real. And then I think it should become some kind of Starfleet like standard operating procedure that whenever Q shows up, everybody's just like completely exasperated and tired. Like nobody bows to this guy. He's like omnipresent and he's snapping and stuff, and nobody cares. They're just like, "Oh my God, here he is again. Here he is again." But my favorite line this time too, Kira definitely nailed it, and I absolutely agree that there should have been more with the two of them. When they're talking about Q's here, and Kira just said, "What's Q?" it just felt so just out of place and wonderful. It was absolutely great. But yeah, she would have wound up shooting him by the end or find a way to throw him into a wormhole. Who knows? Who knows what the prophets would have done to Q?
Yeah.
Where's the levels there?
That would have been an interesting
Mm-hmm.
interaction.
Mm-hmm.
Gods versus gods.
Yeah.
Carrie says, "We all know how much I love Q, but even I can admit he doesn't belong on DS9. I liked him better on Voyager." And she holds up her Q guy. Is that a Q doll, Q puppet, Q guy? What is it?
Yeah, they're called like itty bitties or something. Got a Hallmark.
Oh,
really?
We're having a Hallmark moment. Nice.
so cute.
He's still got a sweet chain too. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sweet chain he's got on the front.
Yeah, but at least his isn't hanging from his ears like Bosch's necklace was. That just gave me a headache seeing it hanging from her ears like that. I mean, that could not have been comfortable. I mean, I don't wear earrings, but it could not have been comfortable.
Yeah.
Well, Jason Oken is very comfortable, and he's about to drop some knowledge on everybody, so I hope you get comfortable as well. Jason, did you notice anything today that you hadn't noticed prior with this episode?
Sure. And, obviously I already talked about the fact that it really sort of had this next generation feel to it. And that's what it is. I mean, and I think I may have said this previously, that there was a lot of at least the thought process was at the beginning of the DS9. It was kind of written like the next generation, and some of these episodes didn't quite fit because the dynamic of the show was different. And I think this is, if there's an example of that, this is an absolutely prime example of it. I think it's probably the worst offender of the entire run, certainly of the entire first season, and it's probably one of my least favorite DS9 episodes, and certainly my least favorite Q episode of any of these shows. Not to say that it wasn't fun to watch. It's a little bit different to say that, is it fun to watch or is it a good DS9 episode? I think it's a bit fun to watch, but it's not a very good DS9 episode. I mean, these things are not mutually exclusive. So that sort of, we're talking about the character of Bashir. I think there's a lot of disservice being paid to him here, and generally a lot in the first season. And I think in the end, it's kind of cartoonish. Did I miss anything? I mean, this is not 1965. This is not one of those kind of shows. So it really didn't fit. It just not servicing the character very well.
Right.
And there were a lot of kind of little things. I mean, you always pick up on little things that I guess didn't notice before. When Vosh brings in this little statue and somebody kind of looks at it and says, "Oh, it's 8 kilograms. It's the lightest 8 kilograms I've ever seen." Or they're very strong in the 24th century. And then, when Vosh locks the, closes that locker, it's a 5-digit code, and I think my iPhone is safer than that.
This guy's got jokes today. I love it.
Funny to see that. And one other thing I noticed, and I'm just curious. I mean, I know that certainly the Berman or Trek shows, they try to be letter perfect. And at one point, Vosh says gold platinum. I wonder if it was written like that or the line was blown.
Right.
Mhm.
We should have asked Robert that
too.
Because I was wondering, is that the only time we've ever heard gold latinum? It feels like it is.
I mean, they also
Isn't it
talked
gold
about,
pressed platinum?
Yeah.
I mean, it's normally gold pressed platinum.
yeah, and they also talked about the latinum coated bucket. I wonder how that happens, because latinum is a liquid, or at least it was later revealed to be a liquid. So I guess nobody knew exactly what it was, back in the first season. And I'll end with this, and this is more of the look of the episode. It actually looks like a next gen. It's shot like next gen. I mean, the way directorially, and sometimes what happens is when you have a lot of these two shots, and it's obviously it's sort of this 4:3 letterbox, and not letterbox, 4:3 aspect ratio, you end up with two characters being very close. And if you look at the tag scene with Q and Vosh, I mean, if you're looking close talking, I don't think it gets any closer than that.
There were a lot of scenes like that where they were just.
Yeah, it just looks weird. I mean, I know that aspect ratio forces you together, but there are ways to shoot it differently. It always rubs me the wrong way. And this had this was a little egregious in my view.
Cirroc, on Deep Space Nine, were there uncomfortably close moments that you had to do? Because we noticed them a lot.
Uncomfortably close?
Like, where the two actors have to be like way closer than what would be natural just because they say it looks better on camera.
Yeah, sometimes, especially when they're trying to frame too many people in one shot. Then you're awkwardly standing close to somebody. It's like, okay. So it happens.
Well, do you have any final thoughts on this Deep Space Nine deep dive today, Cirroc?
One, I noticed that Q called Sisko Benji, and I was offended by it. I thought it was like, what the hell is, call the man by his name, all this little nicknaming stuff. I didn't like that. So I was offended by it. And I didn't notice it before, but Q was being an exceptional asshole in this particular episode. I wanted to go back to the word technobabble and how it was dropped in this episode. I love that. I want to repeat that. I really love that something that is used to describe Star Trek is actually used in Star Trek. I think that's one of the great placements of a word in an episode. It's almost like Lower Decks making fun of itself. So I think that's a great insert there. And actually, Ira commented saying that it was a line we wrote with great glee because at that point we hated the goddamn technobabble. And that sounds like an Ira quote.
Oh yeah,
it does.
That sounds like a direct Ira quote. And then lastly, I'm going to say this. One of the things that made Q work with Picard was the mutual Shakespeare type of performance that was being brought to the scenes. Picard, Patrick Stewart is known for his Shakespeare. And obviously John Delancey as an actor is known for his love of Shakespeare and his performance on stage. The two of them were able to do their Shakespeare stuff, and it worked well because that's what they both love to do, and it brings out that kind of chemistry. Well, Avery Brooks is one of the best Shakespeare actors in the world as well. He's done Othello. He's done all types of Shakespeare. I've seen it with my own eyes, and I know that he's more than capable to match if not surpass, Delancey's Shakespearean performances when he does that kind of thing. And I would have liked to see them use Avery's abilities better in this episode, especially when it comes to his knowledge of Shakespeare and the way he can perform it. I think that would have also elevated this episode to a different level. So yeah, those are pretty much my take on it. I'm glad that Sisko punched Q and he never came back because we didn't even see that.
Great stuff. Yeah, we were talking about that meme. If everybody's seen that meme about Picard dealt with Q, Janeway dealt with Q, and then Sisko punched him and never saw him again. Anyway, that's about it, everybody at home. We appreciate you all joining us today, along with Malissa Longo, thank you, and Eve England, Carrie Schwent, Allison Leach Hyde, Jason Oken, Golda Scott Jensen, and my live out in Tokyo. That's about it for myself, for Cirroc Lofton, for Aaron Eisenberg leading the way. Thank you all very much for joining us. And until next time, enjoy our wild America. No, nobody watched that show. Anybody remember that show? It's like an animal show with Marty Stauffer. Anyway, until next time, always remember the 7th rule.